This is going to be what I would classify as a rant. And I recommend to many of you, I'm being truthful, some of you are not going to want to hear what I have to say, nor are you ready to put up with listening to me get emotional. I'm sorry for where I'm going to go in this message to a certain extent. I realize, again, some of you don't understand why I would get emotional. Why some of you don't understand me at all. You don't understand why I get emotional, why I get frustrated, why I get angry, why I get hurt. This last week I have got to the point where I'm just so burdened, and if I'm not careful, I'll get emotional here now. Folks, Jesus got emotional from one side of the spectrum to the other. Yes, he got angry, but he sinned not, which the Bible says to do, even for that matter. Be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. But I got to tell you guys, there are times that over the last week I have been burdened. I normally don't even do a midweek broadcast because my plate is so full, it's ridiculous. Messages take a while. A rant? Oh no, I'll give you what's on my heart. And I have been feeling God lately so much so, in a way about this, where I'm going to take this message, this rant. This is kind of on the spur of the moment, so just allow me to talk. Again, some of you don't want to stick around. Why frustrated? Why angry? Why hurt? Why weeping? Because where we're going, we don't get. Many of you don't get it. I'm sorry, I'm already getting them. I probably should just wait another day or something before I give this message. Or edit. But I think you guys need to understand at the same time also what's really happening. If you got it, if the church got it, which is going to be the crutch of this message here, this rant, I wouldn't be burdened, at least on this matter. We can't even fathom where we are headed. We don't get where we are going. Today is still normal. It's not tomorrow yet. You still have your family. Your family still has you. You haven't lost your kids, your grandkids. They haven't lost you. Your siblings, your brothers and sisters, your parents and grandparents. Entire extended family members and their family members and their family members. America hasn't experienced over a couple 100 million people dying in one day. One day. We don't even understand that. We can't fathom it. It makes 9/11 look like a cakewalk, like a holiday. This nation is not in mourning yet. And everybody is going to be in such mourning. We don't get it. So if you think, why does Steve get upset? Why does Steve get frustrated when somebody comes on this channel and cherry picks? You watch a video, you come in off of a different subject, you see it, you like, you subscribe, you say, wow, this is pretty cool. And you go to the next video and you say, wow, that's not my belief. That's not my message. And you unsubscribe. And some of you leave never having seen the picture. Never having an understanding why the beliefs are the way they are, why this message is what it is. You've never seen it, and you badmouth, and you call. Last night I'm being rebuked in love, in Jesus' name. Today I'm going to experience God's wrath. It never ends. Some of you, though, you will listen to me. I say, please watch this. Or I say, please watch that. You don't understand what you're saying yet. Please watch this. This is scripture. And where does this come? This belief that I am the one that's wrong. This goes back quite a ways, folks, and I blame the church. I'll get into that in another rant some other time. I blame the church for where we are today. We've learned to become skeptical on what we hear. No matter who's talking, the church now has to become skeptical, accepting what we listen to with a grain of salt. No thanks to what has happened, and I blame it on the church. And we don't understand its implications. What am I talking about? It used to be. This is when everything was nice. I can go back 30 years ago. I was watching a broadcast on television, on TBN, and they brought in, it was a heavily watched show, they brought in the main people who taught pre, mid, and post on one broadcast. And everybody watched, a lot of the church watched it. I'll never forget it. And if they had at that time a no rapture thesis, they'd have brought on that then too, but it was so minimal, nobody talked about it. And then there would have been 4 people on there as opposed to 3. And I know some of you, even on this channel, don't believe in a rapture. This whole thing to me is sad. Because we don't understand the poison, how it's tainted the body of Christ. What we have done has become accepted, and we just put up with it. And I'm getting to this. I want you to see the overall what's burdening me. Because what has happened is a crime. And by the way, for those of you who don't believe in rapture, I was 19 years old. 19 years old, I had my first God dream. And I got to see the end. And it went against, and at that time, I'll have you know, I was pre-trib. Preached it better than most pre-tribbers. I'll never forget one time, my pastor brought in a person to preach pre-trib, and I knew it inside and out. Someone raises a hand and says, what does this mean in the book of Revelation? Nobody can answer. He couldn't answer. I had to raise my hand and say, this is what it means. Pastor's looking at me like, wow, maybe I got the wrong guy preaching about pre-trib. So I believed it with the best of them. Believed it. And at that same time, soon later, I had the end of the world given to me in a dream. And it went against pre-trib doctrine. I didn't understand why there was no law. I told my congregation, I was allowed to preach to this congregation about once a month. And I told them, I said, in the back of my mind, all I knew there was no law. Lawlessness. I didn't make the connection. I said there was no order. It seemed chaotic. I didn't understand it. I knew again, in the back of my mind, marijuana had become legalized. Now you guys have heard this on this channel before in certain messages. I've talked about a little bit of this. My point about this is, it ended with the rapture. All of a sudden, I'm like, whoosh, I felt myself just go. So much so that when the dream ended, I sat up in my bed. I was going forward. That's how much the sensations were there. I got to experience what I know some of you don't believe in, and you don't. And you say, and here again, you sit and take what I say with a grain of salt. I'll get to that point. This is all tied in. I'll tell you, folks, Jesus is going to send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet. That trumpet is what Paul said is going to happen in the twinkling of an eye. And we're going to be changed. And Paul saw this moment and us being changed. And Jesus said he's going to send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet. And he shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Not from one end of the earth to the other. Oh, no. From one end of heaven to the other. Because we're in the sky, folks. Two's grinding at the mill, one's taken, the other's snatched. Two in the field, one's taken, the other's left. Left there. There's a rapture, but that's not what this is about. I'm not here to talk about the rapture. I'm here to tell you the crutch of this, where it started. So TBN brings on the main names, pre, mid, and post. And I am troubled in my spirit where the church is going. I didn't understand the entire implications, what this meant then, but I later did. We got people out there that embrace different religions, folks. Different doctrines. We don't know where they come from. We just all of a sudden, someone preaches to you, you find yourself in church, and you find yourself listening maybe to pre-trib, mid-trib, post. I don't care what you're listening to. I don't even care what part of the doctrine. In fact, this is just an easy way to see it. This is something where I saw that it started. And we sit and we listen to somebody and we embrace that. We don't know where pre-trib necessarily its origin started from, but we embrace it and we believe it. Like every single one of those ministers up there, they knew God had told them, or at least they were convinced of, probably even would have bet their salvation on over the others, that theirs was right and the others were wrong. Of course, every one of them thought that. I'm right, you're wrong. And therein is the error. How would anybody get up and preach and teach that which they are not convinced of? You understand? Oh, you better not. If you preach and teach that which you're not sure of, then you better say that. I learned a hard lesson here within the last few years. I better say everything I think. Explain what is God and what is me, or I'll get into trouble. And I'm watching these people and I'm realizing in the back of my mind, because at this point I was in my early 20s, God had already given me the graph. I already had the graph. I knew it's tri-layer. Coffee. Hold on. Just going to make me. So I'm watching these people, and you got the pre and the mid and the post, and they're absolutely determined that they're all right. And I thought in the back of my head, this isn't God. This has absolutely nothing to do with God. You hear what I mean? It used to be, I started to see it used to be the preacher, the teacher. At least I always did. I needed 2 weeks before I gave a message. I didn't care what message it was. I don't care if I was doing things back to back. Whenever that message came out that God gave me, I would have to seek him in prayer and fasting, and I'd need 2 weeks before I'd ever give a message. Ever. I just wouldn't do it. And that used to be the way it used to be. Pastors would pray at least every week. If they're going to give every Sunday, they should be fasting and praying, and many still do it. Pray and fast over your next message because you want to hear from heaven what you're supposed to be talking about. But what has happened recently, the pulse of what the church want to hear is completely changed. Like the pre, mid, and post. When's the rapture going to occur? Now I'm watching these people, and I had known the graph, and I was no longer a pre-tribber. If you have the graph and you've watched a channel, and some of you are going to start flipping off now, but right now you're going to start unsubscribing because you don't believe this and you don't understand. You don't understand. You're making decisions based on a lack of information, and that's the problem, folks. We're listening to a theme that's out there, a mainstream thesis that's out there, and everybody preaches it. And we've embraced it. So I'm listening to the mid-trib guy, and I don't even like what he's presenting. Does that make it right? Post-trib, I'm ignoring. No, there was no rapture guy, no rapture person there, attempting to throw his beliefs into it. And all I keep feeling, this isn't God. This has absolutely nothing to do with God. And what has happened here in recent times, the church, because we look at something like that, which is easily to see, anybody in their right mind knows they can't all be right. I knew that. Everybody knew that's why they were all on. Who's right, who's wrong, and yet all adamant that they're correct. And I ask you, how is that God? You hear me, folks. You hear me. God doesn't call anybody to preach a lie. Did you hear that? God does not call any person to preach a lie ever, or he has now become a liar. And it's impossible for God to lie. Are you understanding this? If I got somebody out there, you got somebody out there, which is what has happened. The whole church has been tainted. Oh, forget pre, mid, and post. We've learned to accept the division. We don't even recognize that they're all not correct, and yet they're all adamant that they are. No, we've branched out. The church now wants to hear the end times. Over the last decade, started about 20 years ago, it's really been the pulse of the church. The last decade, the body of Christ is wanting, because they feel what's going on, they want the end time message. They want to hear what's about to happen. And we have people now, because of social media and the internet, and got a camera, they get on and they start saying, this is what is going to happen. And yet God never called them to say one word. They weren't called. And yet they've taken upon themselves, and the church has had to step back and sit and have to decipher which is true and which isn't true. And because we have this mainstream message out there, we just all readily accept it because everybody's whistling the same tune. And we don't understand its implications. We don't even know what this means. Why is this happening? Oh, but we've accepted it. We're watching it, and so we get to watch somebody like me, who you don't know from Adam, and you see something, you say, you're wrong, you're just another flake. Or somebody else. Because everybody wants to be a preacher and a teacher and so forth. We got prophets coming out our ears, folks. No, we don't, but we have so-called prophets. And the body's been tainted. You get people out there that fight over it, and nobody knows who to listen to. When before, all it would have been the preachers getting up and talking about what God put on his heart. What he began to feel God wanted to say to his congregation, his church. And he'd get up and he'd preach. And at the end of the service, if God moved especially, which I would love in my services, because I would seek God and pray and fast. I didn't want to give a message if I didn't see God there. And people, not just to me, they say it to all kinds of, at least to the pastors the way it used to be. If that's what's going on, were you talking to me? Did God tell you about me? You gave that message. Oh, is this right for me? It's exactly what I needed. But now we've branched off beyond that. We're now beyond pre, mid, and post, readily accepting the division. We don't think anything of it at all, not in the slightest. And yet the pre The mainstream, it's just mainstream. Pre-trib is mainstream still. They're the most deceived. Now, the unsubscribe button's right down there. But I would advise you to watch a series that I have that I've given. I've given 10 chapters of my book on this channel for free because I want you to have it. I want you to understand what's about to happen. And yet some of you cannot accept because you're inundated and ingrained. We don't even want to listen to what can happen and is going to happen. I promise you, beyond anything you can conceive, pre-tribbers, the reason for the falling away. You're not ready. I'm going to put a series right up there. Please watch the first video. It'll take you 10 minutes. 10 minutes to watch the first video. If you like the first, keep watching. You'll get hooked. I can tell you how many times I've started talking to people, and if I just get them to watch the series, just take 10 minutes of your life. Does it matter to you? If I'm right, does it matter? I know you've been listening to a bunch of people out there, and you have every reason not to believe me at all, which is my biggest burden. I don't want one person to go to hell. Not one. You don't get out. And there's people watching this channel, and you will. This small little channel I got. And that's my burden. I'm likely going to be on TV soon. I just got off the phone with an agent working on 2 channels. I'll tell you more about this another time. That's not what this is about. This message has to get out, though. Take 10 minutes, watch the first video. I think you'll be amazed. You'll get to see a revelation that I saw that amazed me back when I got it. I couldn't believe it. So amazing I couldn't, and God gave me a trial error, and I began to read. Over the years, I wondered, why in the world did God literally unravel the book of Revelation? And I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited to see somebody, and I knew at one point, and some of you even have a problem with this, and I also have a problem telling you because you guys step on it. You don't understand it. You don't. Again, you cherry pick. Why would God give one person a message and not another? I don't really know. Why did God give the book of Revelation to John? I'd got me. I don't know. One person to unravel it. I don't know. I don't really know. That troubled me, and I kept waiting and waiting. Never. Nobody's ever had the graph. And you must have it, or you're not going to unravel the book of Revelation. Guaranteed. It's over. It doesn't work. I'm not here to talk about that either, though. But we get people, because of the pulse of the church, pastors, teachers, that were called to pastor and teach, diving into where they know the pulse of the church, where they want to go now because the church feels it. The end is near. And so they dive in and they begin researching what so-and-so said, which said to them so-and-so, and so-and-so said to them, and they read that and researched that, and they got that from so-and-so, and it just goes on and on and on, and nobody really knows where it all started. One of the biggest problems about all of this, researching into the end time. I had wanted for forever to talk about it. I would only talk about the graph to certain people that were close. And I'd say, see this? Check this out. See this? Isn't this amazing? But I never could preach it. And I knew, you hear me now, God called me to preach an end-time message. And I knew he did. But I couldn't talk about it. Kept waiting and waiting. And I had to shut up and be silent no matter how many times I'd get up and preach. I could not talk about what I knew. That I knew came from God. And I had to wait. And listen to people that you listen to. That are like parrots in many things, in many areas. And I knew in my heart that God was not that he may not have called them to preach and teach, but he did not call them to talk about the end. And these people have taken it upon themselves, and they've literally made God, if those who say God has called me, God showed me and preached, I'm here to teach about the end, and they're repeating what other people said and have embraced it and think God showed them something else about what somebody else said. And they're expounding upon lie after lie, and I tell it, I repeatedly, God did not call you to preach about the end. If it goes against this, and I say this with everything that's in me, if it goes against this graph, God did not call you, sir. You are going to send people to hell. And I know you don't understand it. God is never going to endorse anybody to preach a lie, ever. Or God becomes a liar, and he can't lie. Now, I know you're adamant about what you believe, but I want you to understand the implications. I've been hearing on the internet, people even on my channel, whom I love, all of you, listen to me, I love all of you except, the dude in the blue t-shirt. I don't know what you're doing here still. I love all of you. About 2020. You hear me? I mean it. I love all you guys. I really do. Some of you are some amazing people. But my spirit is becoming grieved about this 2020 nonsense stuff that the closer we get, we're going to see more clearly. I'm sorry. I know everybody's saying it. Everybody's saying it. It's not just one person. Oh, no. You're just... It's not one person. So I don't blame any... Here's what gets me, though. Here's what's grieving me. The church is blind. Did you hear what I said? And this is the reason for the falling away, because we are so blind. When 2020, I don't care if it's this year, next year, it doesn't really matter. When things begin to happen, they're still not going to understand. They may even have 2020 vision. They're still not going to get it. You hear me? This is where I'm grieving. This is the crutch of all of this. You take what I say with a grain of salt. Such as last week I did a message on the Creator. I'm sorry, the Trinity, the Creator, and the creation. Y'all loved it until it came time to the creation. You loved it. Next week I'm going to do final thoughts on the creation. You guys should want. You know who I'm bringing in? Chuck Misler and Perry Stone. And if you guys don't, of course I know some of you salivate over Perry Stone. You don't believe me, believe them. They found some things I didn't even know about. Got all excited about. Yeah, the creation that you don't believe. And you look at me and you think I'm telling you things that are wrong. I pray. That message I've had over 35 years. Doesn't matter. You take everybody, because there's a reason to take everybody with a grain of salt. You don't know what anybody's saying. You don't know what to believe. That's a better way of saying it. So the 2020 thing, how blind the church is. When these events begin to go down, you hear me. We're going to watch Jerusalem get attacked. We're going to watch America be hit. We're going to have a quake around there. Before or after Jerusalem, I really don't know. America is going to be hit first trumpet, though people are going to be spouting off sixth trumpet. If I asked you something, and I want you guys to understand the deception even more, the deception that's here. The entire church, no thanks to mainstream, in one verse 27 in the book of Daniel, chapter 9. If I ask you, what opens the week up? The majority of you, or at least the majority of everybody who hasn't watched this channel, this is the part that's important to me. This is what's a man crying. What opens the week? Almost 10 out of 10 are going to say the Antichrist. The Antichrist opens the week. He's going to sign a 7-year peace treaty. We got him marked right there. Allowing Israel to rebuild their temple. Sacrifices are going to resume. He, in the middle of the week, breaks this supposed treaty that he made. All that coming off of one verse, and mainstream repeats it like a parrot. And everybody's looking for that. The Antichrist is going to show up. If you had this message, you that are on the channel would know different. And look how many people are on this channel. Look at the trinket. We're not even a drop in the bucket. This is the part that grieves me. That's another reason why I got to get to television, folks. I am so grieved because everybody's going to be looking for the Antichrist, and all of a sudden we're waiting for the Antichrist. A 7-year peace treaty, the temple's going to be rebuilt, and yet the temple's going to be destroyed. Jerusalem occupied, America destroyed. And these things are going to be happening right in front of us, and the church isn't going to understand what's going on. Even some of you who don't hear even really what I'm saying. Aren't you getting what I'm telling you? And you know what happened? This deception that's out there, the restrainer, the Holy Ghost is going to be holding back the Antichrist. First trumpet will have hit. Jerusalem's already destroyed, occupied, the Wailing Wall gone, whatever, if there's anything even more, gone. Here comes the Antichrist. No! He's being held back. The falling away begins to happen. Because first trumpet hits. America and a couple 100 million people gone. Actually more than that, because it's more than our nation anyway, folks. And people are falling away. Where's the Antichrist? If this isn't the weak, what in the world is the weak? Did you hear what I said? If this isn't going to be the weak, these events we're seeing, all hope for a temple is now gone. America's gone. She's fallen into civil war by the ending of the first year. She's in civil war. Still, no Antichrist is being held back. And people are falling away because they can't believe in anything and they don't have this message. Don't you see this? Are you understanding? And America and the world begin to go into mourning. Except other nations, no, they rejoice. Send gifts to one another. And to us, it's just the beginning of sorrows. And then a year after first trumpet, we're really in a civil war. And during that year, enemy lines are being drawn. You're not out by the second year after first trumpet, you're not getting out. And you may think that's the way you want it, but that's you're supposed to get out of Babylon, folks. Judgments are going to start coming on that I'll talk about some other time. It just gets really, really, really bad. Really bad. So finally, about a couple years after first trumpet, finally the restrainer holds back. And how many have fallen away? How many people didn't even know to believe there's a God anymore? Because what happens, we think we're going to see, no, you're not going to get any of what's going on. It's going to be right in front of your face, except unless you have this. And this isn't preached by anybody. That's been my frustration from the very beginning. God, why? Why? And I'm nobody. And you know what? It's meant to be that way at the moment. It's meant to be that way. A little remnant get to watch what's happening here. You know, I counted myself blessed when I saw Revelation unraveled. And God told me I had an end time message. This was over 30 years ago. And I was always extremely blessed. And I thought, who gets to hear this? Whoever finally gets to hear this, wow. And I've known that right before the very end, this message gets to be thrown out. But even then, only to a choice few. It's going to be more than this. Yes, it amps up more than this. Quite a bit. I'll tell you some things at some other time. But I always felt, why God? Why didn't anybody else have the graph? Why me? Why just... And then you know what happened a decade ago, and I began to be more in awe? Because I wrote the first book. wrote this book, and the 70th week is the final chapter. And basically, the graph gives you the 7-year period and a whole lot more in the book of Revelation. The 70th week is seen in the book of Revelation, and people will tell you repeatedly, no, it's not. There is no 7-year period. Well, to anybody else, no, it's not, unless you've seen the graph. And there's implications to this that can actually save you. And you will be able to see if it's in 2020. You will see, you who have this, and the rest of the church isn't going to get a clue, and they're going to fall away and fall away. And the restrainer, God, is holding back the revealing of the Antichrist that the entire church is going to be looking for. And it's on purpose. He's holding it back because everybody wanted to listen to mainstream from people who should never have said one word. God never called you to talk about the end. God doesn't endorse lies. So I'm in the 70th week, and I'm not getting it. I'm researching and researching and researching. I was so tired of researching. The preterism crowd to the futurism crowd, I'm going back and forth. Basically, the difference, those of you who don't know, the 70th week ended with the death of Christ, or the 70th week to the futuristic crowd. No, that's a week yet to come. And I didn't know. I'm so tired of researching and researching and researching as I'm writing the book. You guys will see if you read the 7th chapter, or the 70th week chapter, which I think that is I forget what chapter. It doesn't matter. I think it's chapter 9. And anyway, the point is, I'm writing side by side. This is the way preterism believes. This is the way futurism believes. Back and forth. I was so tired, exhausted of reading about all of it. What people thought the 70th week meant. So one week I'm done. I've had enough, God. I'm standing by my fireplace, and I tell some of you have heard this, but this is the beginning. God, I'm just going to close the chapter out. I'm not settled in my spirit. You're not telling me which one's right. I couldn't figure out which one's right. All I saw was confusion on both sides, and I had it. I thought, somewhere I'm going to be able to see what's going on. And I tell God, I'm going to close the chapter out tomorrow. If you don't, it's the weekend. I said on a Saturday, I felt prompted to go read the verse one more time, which is where you get the 70th week in Daniel 9:27. Now, I can't say God told me, or I didn't have a word from God. I just felt prompted to go read it again, as if I had missed something. That's my thought when I go over there. And as I go and I start to read, God speaks instantaneously, and I have the entire meaning of 9:27, the whole 70th week, which is what the chapter's about. And you hear me for a minute. I'm standing there, and I'm like this, and I'm dumbfounded. I couldn't believe it. After having gone through all of what I went through, the people as far back as we can seem to trace is back for about a millennia, is about as far back as I can go. They're believing it's preterism or it's futurism, back and forth. No wonder these guys never could get their act together. It wasn't correct. And then I'm standing there, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding. Oh my God. And I knew nobody had seen it. I had exhausted myself out on the thoughts that were out there. And all of a sudden, I now have harmony. More harmony comes to the graph. It becomes even more harmonic. Well, no wonder. And I know some of you believe the Antichrist is going to stand up and rise. He's going to form a peace treaty. And it doesn't say any of that, folks. And that's not what this message is about. And over the following years, what began to happen, God began to give me more and more of the book of Daniel. God gave me the beasts. And I know the thoughts, the preterism crowd, you can go through it. These beasts have already happened. There's even another mainstream guy out there who's got such a massive following. He'll tell you about the beast too, though he parts ways. He's got his own version of the beasts. And then God tells me what the beasts are, and it's neither of those. I put some of that on the channel for you. I gave you the first 2 beasts. All 4 are in the book if you want to get the book. I tell you the first. I said, According to the one guy, the main guy, he'll tell you that the lion is Great Britain, and the wings, which apparently, as far as he says, his followers will tell you, the eagle wings is America, but they grow out of the lion, supposedly. That's the interpretation they give, and yet that's not what the word says. It says the wings were plucked from the lion. They didn't grow out of the lion, sir. And you who listen to him, please, people. They didn't grow out. They were plucked from the lion. And I tell you who the lion is. And it ain't Great Britain. God told me in an instant, and I knew. I didn't care, but God started giving me words over years. God told me again right around the same time, gave me the bear. As I started reading about it, the bear. He's right on its Russia, but I tell you why he's on its side. Said it here on the channel. The bear doesn't stand to power. He's not going to stand up. He gets up just enough to devour much flesh, and specifically 3 nations down to the skeletal. Now I know I didn't give you the third. Some of you may have guessed it. It's in the book. But some of you don't know what to believe. I mean, you might be right, Steve. You want to know what I would do, folks? You want to know what I would do if I were you? On this channel, you've got to see the 70 weeks and the 70th week revealed. Unsealed, folks. Unsealed. If I saw somebody explain to me what nobody's ever been able to see, never even got it. He explains to me why the 69 weeks are split up. Why the 7 weeks and the 62 weeks are different kinds of weeks, because God told this man that to differentiate. And he explains to me that it's not 483 years that takes you to the 70th. No, it's a Jubilee cycle plus 75 days in the next cycle that takes you to the destruction of Jerusalem. And I see that happen with some guy who tells me and explains to me why the weeks are separate, 7 and 62. And it's a Jubilee cycle, and he shows me 75 days in. And he also, mind you, years before, shows me that he saw in the Spirit, at least said he saw in the Spirit, and says it on the camera here on YouTube. And I had it in the book. People are well aware of this, that he got to see, and he says he saw 2 timelines come together. And 75 days in, after Nisan, that he gets to watch the destruction of Jerusalem. And later he pieces it all together accidentally. Well, it wasn't accidentally. I had the 70-week revelation for over a year before I pieced it and God told me what it was. I didn't know what to do with it. You know, there's one revelation on the graph I had for over 25 years. God never gave me the answer. I had to wait 25 years. Thank God the 70 weeks didn't take 25 years. But my point is, what would I do? If I saw a guy literally unseal Daniel and make perfect sense in Daniel 9, and I knew that made sense. No wonder nobody got it. And I saw all the harmony and I got it. You know what? If that guy told me God said this is what the beasts are in Daniel 7, I'd listen to that man. I'd put my money on whoever that guy was over the other people who were sitting there saying what they thought the beasts were in Daniel 7. Now that's just me. And the same guy said God told him Daniel chapter 7, also told him Daniel chapter 8. You've seen Daniel chapter 9, Daniel 10, there's nothing to unseal. I've never talked about Daniel 11. You want to know something? I'll give you guys something. That's what I was going to talk about. I was going to unseal it for you on here on the channel, and I felt no, I'm not supposed to. That was going to be what I was talk to you about in June and July. Now, I've talked with a few people about it in emails. I gave little nuggets and things, but it's never been given. In the book, 12 is given, chapter 12, Daniel. And as far as I can find everywhere, nobody has this. It's against everybody. The entire unsealing of Daniel that you've seen, except for 11, those of you who have the book, and some of you have seen chapters on here, parts, at least all of it, if all of it in chapter 9, part of chapter 7, you guys have seen things that are against everybody else. And this is going to cause people to fall away because they don't get it. But my only point is, you listen to what I say and you just cherry pick. And I also realize some of you aren't meant to hear any of this. And that's what the problem is. You're not meant to hear. It's sealed from you. But I'm not going to fail. What I'm supposed to do as best is within me. I'm not going to fail in getting out this message. I want people to hear what's about to happen in the year 2020. But the majority of the church, unless you have this book, this little channel, or something happens in the future, as I'm trying to do on Facebook, you're not going to know any of this. You're going to be as blind as a bat. You're not going to see anything that's happening. And you're going to wait for the Antichrist, and you're going to wait for this peace treaty, wait for the rebuilding of the temple, and you're going to start to find out all hope is lost. After first trumpet, not sixth trumpet, sir, all hope is lost after the first trumpet, and this restrainer God is continuing to hold back the revealing because everybody and their dog is waiting for the Antichrist. No thanks to people who should shut up, and you are going to cause people to fall away. Your lies are the very reason you should never have picked up a camera and started talking about what God has not given you. He didn't call you to talk about it. And I know that because he called me to talk about it. And I have forever, ever wondered why. I've not failed God yet on this. I don't want to say yet. I'm not going to fail him. But I realize if I did not give this message and get it out as best as I know how, God will pick somebody else. But to this date, it hasn't happened yet. And I've never been able to understand it. When I tell people this, they say, yeah, God can't do that. God isn't going to use this one person. No, God can have Daniel. He'll use one Daniel to write Daniel. He'll write the book, and one person did it. Daniel's basically the same as Revelation. Here's a little nugget for you. I'll give you nuggets in each time I do a rant. I'm not going to talk about chapter 11 anymore, but I'll tell you this. 11 is chapter 8 in Daniel. Did you hear what I said? You have the book. Chapter 8 in the book of Daniel is the details are in chapter 11 of the book of Daniel. You're just seeing the details in chapter 11. Of course, you're getting the overall of chapter 8 in chapter 7. So my heart's been grieved. I've been bothered. I've been hurt. I've been weeping. I've been crying. And I'd like you guys to pray for me that somehow I get this message out as best as I can. I'm so burdened. I'm so burdened. Well, this has been the rant. I would invite you guys to watch the creation that's going to be this weekend. Again, Chuck Misler, Perry Stone's going to be in it. But it's only final thoughts. And because I want you guys to understand, I wasn't wrong on the Trinity, I wasn't wrong on the Creator, and I wasn't wrong on the creation. There's things in there that I know you don't want to hear, but you should hear. You need to understand what's really in the Word. And I promise you, folks, one thing. I will do my best to only talk about that which I know is a word from God. And if I'm off into the realm of speculation, like I did in prophecy number 9, that I said is more like a prediction number 9, I'll tell you. I put it down there on the screen for everybody to see it anyway. I'm not going to make mistakes. God help me, please. Don't cherry pick. I know why you do with everybody else. And that's my biggest problem, where this all started. It's poisoned and tainted the church to where nobody knows who to listen to and know what to believe. Look for more to come. Until next time, take care and God bless.